This happened quite a few years ago, back when I was still pretty young, and the internet was just starting to evolve into the beast it is now. Like many people in college, I'd gotten into weed in high school and kept going from there. But my local dealers were unreliable, and the prices weren't exactly friendly, so I started experimenting with the dark web. At first, it felt like I'd discovered a hidden world. Anonymous sellers, low prices, and creative delivery methods. Small packages tucked inside books, Bibles, even electronics. For a while, it worked. I found a seller I liked, and for 3 months we did regular business. Then one day he messaged me something new, said he'd be in my area and could make a big drop, save both of us the hassle of mailing. I was skeptical at first, but the offer was good. Too good, really. What would normally cost around $11,000 in product, he was offering for just $500. He called it a favor, said he was clearing out inventory. All I had to do was meet him in person in a nearby park at 2 a.m. I didn't want him knowing where I lived, so I agreed to meet under one of the old street lamps near a tree 3 blocks away from my place. No cameras, no witnesses. Under the cover of darkness, it would be a simple exchange. Quick in, quick out. As the day drew near, my nerves started to flare. I realized I didn't know anything about this guy, not even his real name. He knew where I lived, what I was buying, how often I used, but I didn't even know what he looked like. Still, I kept telling myself it would be fine. That night, I pulled $500 from the ATM and tried to stay calm. I didn't have a gun, and there was no way to get one that late. All I had was a small pocket knife, which I slid into my jeans just in case. I felt paranoid, but I chalked it up to nerves. Just a deal, just a park, no big deal. Around 1:30 a.m., I headed out. I lit a smoke and walked through the empty streets, music playing low in my earbuds. I got to the spot early and sat under the flickering lamplight, trying to keep my cool. Time dragged. 2 o'clock came and went. 2:10. Nothing. 2:20. Still no sign. Then, around 2:25, I saw a man approaching in the distance. Alone, hooded, moving quickly. This has to be him, I thought. Everything about him screamed caution, his pace, his posture. He walked right past me without a word, then stopped under the tree and waved me over. I approached. He opened his jacket and handed me a small black bag. I peeked inside. It looked legit, just what I'd been expecting. I reached into my wallet and gave him the cash. That's when things changed. He looked down at the money and frowned. This is only $500. Yeah, I said. That's what we agreed, remember? The special deal. He shook his head. No, dude, the price is $1,000. Hand over the rest. I stood there stunned. That's not what you said. I can't get more tonight. Just sell me half. That's when he got aggressive. You wasted my time, bro. And that's when I heard the click behind me. I froze. A second man had crept up from behind, and I could feel the cold pressure of a pistol barrel against my back. Why didn't you bring the full amount? A deep voice asked. My heart slammed against my ribs. Another figure began walking toward us from the trees, slowly. Should have brought all the money, he said flatly. Then, nothing. Everything went black. I woke up hours later, lying face down in the dirt. My head was pounding. They'd taken my wallet, of course. And the bag? Still there. I opened it, nothing but paracetamol. A joke. I stumbled home, furious and humiliated. I'd been scammed, robbed, and lucky to be alive. I wanted to report it, but who could I go to? I'd met a drug dealer from the dark web in the middle of the night. I was on my own. When I returned to the forum I'd used to contact him, the seller's account was gone, wiped clean. Maybe he'd just made a new one under another name. Maybe he'd done this before. Maybe I was just the next in a long line of fools. Just be careful. Things might have changed since then, but the dangers are still real. If you meet someone online, especially in the darkest corners of the web, don't fool yourself into thinking you know who you're dealing with. You don't. And sometimes, you won't realize it until a gun is pressing against your back. What I'm about to share happened in 2018. At the time, I was living in the state of Michoacán, Mexico, and working at a company called Masa, a large manufacturer of corn flour, one of the most consumed staples in the country. I worked in production. Among the people I occasionally interacted with was one of the factory guards, a woman around my age. We weren't close friends, but over time we built a casual, friendly bond, exchanging gossip during shift changes, chatting during slow moments. Then, one day, she didn't show up for work. No one said anything, just that she didn't come in. Another day passed, then two. Still no word. I assumed maybe she was sick or had taken some emergency leave. We all have lives outside the factory, after all. On my next day off, I had some quiet time to myself. As a single mom, most of my days are consumed by my job and my children, and I usually only get to scroll through my phone in the afternoons or when I'm off. That day, I was browsing Facebook when I came across a video that stopped me cold. It was her, my coworker, the security guard. She looked completely distraught, like she had just witnessed something out of a nightmare. In the video, her hands were shaking, her breathing was shallow, and she was barely holding it together. Her face was pale, her voice trembling, and she was crying uncontrollably. She said she had just seen something horrifying. According to her, a large trailer had arrived at the factory, stacked high with pallets. But they weren't carrying materials. She said the pallets were filled with what looked like the dismembered remains of children, stacked like meat, as if they were nothing. She repeated it several times, sobbing, screaming, unable to process what she had witnessed. She said it wasn't just a glance. She saw everything. I was so shocked I sent her a message immediately on WhatsApp, but she didn't reply. Her last online status showed she was active 24 hours after the video had been posted. And then, nothing. Again, I didn't think too much of it at first. Life was hectic. I was juggling work and the kids. I assumed maybe she'd gone somewhere. Maybe she was hiding out. Maybe it was stress or some kind of panic attack. She was a single mom too. She had a 9-year-old son and a 12-year-old daughter, bright, quiet kids. She lived not too far from me, so a couple of days later, after getting someone to watch my children, I decided to stop by her place. But there was no one there. I asked the neighbor. They told me that one night a white van, one of those used for a company personnel transport, pulled up outside her house. She and her 2 children climbed inside. And that was it. They were gone, left everything behind. It felt wrong, too quiet, too sudden. I had a sick feeling I couldn't shake. 2 days later, the news broke, though only in whispers, not headlines. A homeless man had found a suitcase dumped in an area where garbage and debris are often abandoned. When police arrived, they opened it. Inside were the mutilated remains of a woman. It was her. When I heard the news, it didn't feel real. I couldn't breathe. I rushed back to Facebook to find the video again. It was still there. The comments had exploded. One said, "Poor woman, they're going to take her now. She should have just gone home." Another read, "She saw something she wasn't supposed to. She's not going to make it." But the one that chilled me to the bone was this: "I hope she doesn't have children. For being nosy, they'll do the same to hers as they did to those in the truck." That comment alone had over 200 replies. I read every single one. People were saying that what she saw was one of the dark web transport units, vehicles that moved between cities carrying victims who had been trafficked or sold in auctions online. Some even claimed these trailers passed through different regions daily, unnoticed. Until then, I had only heard vague rumors about the dark web. I thought it was just a corner of the internet where hackers hung out. But these comments described something else, something much more disturbing. People talked about children being sold by their own parents, others being taken off the streets, all rented out like commodities for perverse entertainment. And according to these people, the bodies were discarded when they were no longer of use. When I sorted the comments by most recent, some were already referencing the discovery of the suitcase. They knew. They had seen this kind of thing before. Some tried to discredit her, saying she was probably hallucinating or on drugs. But that wasn't her. She didn't smoke, didn't drink, and certainly wasn't the type to fabricate something like this. I knew her well enough to know that. If what she said wasn't true, then why was she silenced? What truly terrifies me to this day is not just what happened to her, but what didn't happen afterward. No major news outlets covered her death. A few small blogs referenced the video, but no one mentioned the suitcase. In a country like ours, where every femicide typically makes front-page news, this was silence. That's what convinced me this was being hidden on purpose. She spoke the truth, and they made sure no one listened. And as for her children, they were never found, not a trace, not a word, not even a follow-up investigation. I think about that comment every single day. They'll do to her children what they did to those. It plays in my head like a curse, because deep down, I know whoever took her didn't stop there. This happened when I was a dumb 20-year-old addicted to online games. My laptop was broken, so I borrowed my older brother's without asking. While searching for games, I found a weird site. This was before I even used Facebook, and many of these sites were unsafe. But I didn't care. I typed in "cool games not boring," scrolled through links, and then a strange pop-up appeared. Death games. It felt different. I clicked. The screen was blank for a moment, then red text appeared. "Do you want to watch someone die?" Click submit to continue. It looked cheesy, bloody letters and all, but I stayed on the page. The button started blinking. Scared? Don't be. It's just a game. I clicked. The animation loaded. It was crude, 3 characters like twisted cartoons. 2 men in robber outfits stood beside a woman tied to a chair. She was shaking, animated to look terrified. One man turned and said, "Do you want to see her die?" His voice was distorted, like it had been altered. 2 buttons appeared, yes or no. I hesitated, but the man snapped, "You clicked. You want to see? Just do it." So I clicked yes. One man put on a butcher's apron. What followed was horrifying. He dismembered the woman alive with a hacksaw. Her screams were way too real. The sound of bones, gurgling, sobbing. It felt like I was listening to a recording of an actual murder. I felt cold. Then, "Did you like it? Want to see something better?" I clicked yes again. Now the scene changed. Same 2 men, now in scuba gear. A guy in a suit stood at the edge of a pond, tied up. A sign popped up. "Do you want to watch him die?" I clicked yes again. The man was dragged into the water. He screamed, struggled, begged. A splash. Silence. Then he surfaced, arms gone, body torn. Something dragged him back under. A massive alligator appeared and took him for good. I wanted to stop. I felt sick. But the screen changed again. Now the men weren't cartoons, they were real. In a gray room, wearing white masks. Next to them was a mutilated woman. One held a bloody suit on a hook. the voice said. "Fun, wasn't it? You asked for this. Don't leave. You'll ruin everything." I froze. Those weren't animations. They had disguised real murders as cartoons. 3 buttons appeared. "Yes, I want to experiment." "No, I don't." "I want to meet you." I hit no, repeatedly. Finally, the site closed. I sat sweating, trembling. I checked my history. Nothing. It was gone. Then my brother came home. I told him everything. He turned pale, pulled me away from the computer, ran a bunch of commands, then shut it off. "That wasn't a normal site," he said. "It was from the dark web. You saw something real." I said we should call the police, but he warned me not to. "It's dangerous. Don't talk about this." He said he'd take care of it. I don't know how. I never saw that site again, but I never forgot it.
This happened to me 3 years ago now, and yes, before you say anything about me being a woman or overreacting to jump on the trend of having a stalker, I did actually have one. I worked at a smaller Domino's for about 2.5 years. This happened about 6 months into me working there. I was 18 at the time, pretty much freshly 18, and was working there to pay my car payment and have a job while I figured out what I wanted to do with my life. I was working a night shift with my boss, assistant manager, and a few others. My shift started at 4 in the afternoon and went until midnight, so I was a closer. About an hour into my shift, a man parked a white truck outside and walked into the building. I was working the front, so I greeted him and asked if he had an order placed already. He said yes and told me his name. His order wasn't ready yet, so I told him that it would be a few minutes. Now, to me, everyone looks tall considering I'm 5'2", but this man was tall, I'd guess around 6'4". He looked older, like late 20s to early 30s, was heavier set, white, and was wearing a Wendy's uniform. Being the typically friendly person I am, I made conversation and asked if he worked at the Wendy's across the street, as I had used to work there. He gave me a smile and said, "Shame, wish you still worked there for my sake." To me that was odd, and his tone definitely sounded flirtatious, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. After a bit more of some small talk, I gave him his pizza and told him to have a nice night. About 30 more minutes went by when the phone rang. I picked it up and answered it. "Thank you for calling Domino's. This is Jordan. How may I help you?" Oh, the cute redhead that just helped me out. My heart dropped. My suspicions being confirmed about the guy flirting with me. He asked me for my number, and I told him no thank you, and that I wasn't willing to give that information out, told him to have a good day, and hung up. I hoped that would be the end of it. To be sure, I had let both my boss and assistant manager know what had happened and that I was uncomfortable. Luckily, they completely understood, my boss making a comment, not saying this is a bad thing, but you barely look 16, so he almost sounds like a pedophile. Now, from an outside perspective, he could have just been being friendly. Yes, I understand that, and at that point, I could have been overreacting, you're right, but I was just uncomfortable. Fast forward to about 10 at night. I saw a white truck park outside the building, and the same man get out of the truck. I immediately turned to my assistant manager, her pulling me into the back and into the office so he couldn't see me. My boss approached the guy and asked him what he needed, but the guy just kept looking around for me. I could see this because the office had a window that sort of acted like a one-way mirror. I started crying, my manager hugging me and telling me she wasn't going to let anything happen to me. She's a big girl, not like heavy, just bigger and more built than I am. My boss spoke to the guy, saying, "Look, man, she's already rejected you, and I'm not letting you see or talk to her. Get out of my store, because if you can't tell, she's uncomfortable." The guy's face twisted in anger, and he stormed out of the store. He climbed into his truck, backed out of his spot so fast he spun his tires, and squealed off, I had let out a sigh of relief, my boss coming to the back to check on me and let me know that I was safe, to take my time and clean myself up, and that I could go home early because that was a lot to handle. He then went back up front to run the store. My manager and I sat there and talked, her trying to make me laugh a bit while I calmed down. The phone rang in the office, and my manager answered. Later, I found out it was one of our drivers. He called asking what vehicle the guy that was harassing me drove. She told him a white truck. And he said that the guy was driving his truck around the parking lot, circling it, waiting for me to leave. My manager said, "Oh no." By the time I said, "What?" she was already up, her taser in hand, running out of the office and to the front door. She ran outside and made it go off, giving that typical shocking sound. He left the parking lot and sped off down the street. At this point, I called my dad. He was across the street at the bar. He's not an alcoholic, he just enjoys throwing darts on a Friday night. I told him to come to my work and follow my home because this creepy guy was freaking me out. Pretty quickly, my dad got there, gave me his keys, and told me to drive his car, and he'd drive mine in case the guy knew what car I drove. I drove home with no issues and barely slept that night. For the next month, that guy would park in the parking lot next to my car for hours, waiting for me to leave the store. I never left while he was there. Eventually, he stopped parking and just circled the parking lot and building a few times a day. 3 months later, it finally all stopped. Nothing has happened since. If you're going to take anything from this, just know that even with the very little initial interaction I had with the guy, my gut was right, and that he was a scary guy. So, always trust your gut. I have a knife on me at all times now, and I refuse to leave my night job without someone walking me to my car. I don't work there anymore, but that incident still haunts me. In 2022, I got bored and decided to try out Tinder. I'd had no luck finding any potential long-term partners, so thought, hey, I'm 18 now. No harm in trying it. I set up my profile and put up several pictures, including me stood in front of my old car. It had no identifying features visible though, so it couldn't be identified. After a few awkward conversations, I matched with a guy called Liam. Liam genuinely loved to talk to me and said he was 21. We spoke for a few days, but he then started asking me very sexual and dark questions and telling me about BDSM and how he'd like to do that with me. I blocked him immediately as he was making me feel uncomfortable, and I had a guy feeling something was off. Immediately after I blocked him, I started getting friend and follower requests from Liam. But here's where it started getting creepy. He even started trying to follow me on accounts I had which were completely anonymous, and figured out he'd been following my then anonymous TikTok for 6 months. I messaged him and begged him to leave me alone and that he was making me uncomfortable. He did not stop. He sent full registration details for my old car and told me he knew what street I lived on and was trying his hardest not to break into my house and get me. He told me how he'd seen me on the street and resisted the urge to snog and touch me. He listed places he'd seen me over the last few months, and if I didn't accept him, he'd make me accept him. This majorly freaked me out. I blocked him on everything and put on my Instagram story his details to see if my friends knew anything. Immediately, one of my friends told me they knew exactly who he was. He'd been chased out of a different town for being touchy-feely with underage girls and college students. He'd been kicked out of college due to this and was facing rape charges. His family had kicked him out his home, so he was sleeping rough. He was keeping on a low, as whenever he was seen by someone who vaguely knew him, he was beaten up. At the time, I didn't take it any further, but just 2 weeks after the stuff he did with me, he was ran out of my town for saying an underage girl. Last I heard, he was in a larger city, but I've not heard what's happened with him rape charge. That was the only time I ever used Tinder. That experience was enough. This literally just happened, and I'm using speech to text to tell you guys as I sit in my bathroom waiting for my parents to answer so I can go back home. I just moved to Cape Cod. I live in a weird little house that I found in the quiet town of East Falmouth. The house is a little rundown, but after considering the fact that the house is technically OC to live in, and it is a really good price, I was willing to put up with it. I was up all night, and for the 4th night in a row, as I've been talking to this girl that I met online. Weird shit has been happening to me since I met her. See, I've always been one to knock a scary story as a coincidence or flat out made up, and of course, this girl is full of ghost stories. I've never felt such a wrong feeling hearing them as I do when she tells them. It's currently 5 a.m. and about 20 minutes ago, she told me that she had to take a quick nap before school. This was after she was telling me ghost stories all night. She started sending me memes after telling me ghost stories, and I still felt sick, no matter how many funny memes she sent me. She kept telling me that she was feeling watched, and every time she says that, I started to feel like I was being watched. She kept saying she was seeing something out of the corner of her eyes, and the same thing would happen to me as or before she said it. She then just told me before she got off the phone that she knew something was in the room with her, and that's when I knew it. There was something in the room with me. I ignored it. She hung up. Earlier in the night, I had cracked a seltzer water, and right after she hung up, the bubbles started growing louder and louder until it was deafening. I was sitting in the guest room, and I have a curtain divider that splits the 2 beds, and it started moving like crazy. I decided to run, but first I had to move the curtain, and I had a feeling that when I moved the curtain, I would see what it was. I contemplated for a second, but with the curtain open, nothing. I felt blessed and ran towards the door to get the hell out of there. I ripped the door open and there was. It was not human, and I don't know what it was. I can only describe as a figure made of shapes with a face, and the features of the face were upside down, but the head wasn't. There's something in my house. I ran past it, but had to push it to get through. It felt like nothing and something at the same time. I looked back and was gone. I don't know if I should call the police. I don't know who to tell. They will think I'm crazy. I told my parents, and they still haven't answered after explaining this whole story. I travel alone. I document it. My channel isn't big yet, maybe 12,000 subscribers, but I post regularly. Off-grid campsites, van conversions, solo travel tips, that kind of thing. I stay out of cities, and I stay off well-worn paths. The further I am from people, the safer I feel. Or I guess I should be saying, the safer I used to feel. Tonight, I'm parked off a forest road in Idaho, miles from the nearest town. It's the kind of place where, if you screamed, no one would hear you. That's one of my go-to videos, by the way. A big scream, loud as I can, and then just the silence afterward. Basically, the place was perfect, until the knock came. A single soft knock. Not on the door, on the window. I froze. It was just after 1 a.m. The woods were silent, no wind, no animal noises. My van is unmarked. I never advertise I'm a woman traveling alone, and I always wait and post my videos a week after I leave the spot, just to make sure no one catches on to where I'm parked. So how did someone find me, let alone creep up without setting off the motion lights? Another knock. Light. Insistent. There was no way this could be anything good, right? My heart was racing, my stomach already twisted into knots. Muscles pulled tight, I reached for my phone. My stupid fingers fumbled it, and it hit the floor mat. The thump seemed thunder loud, and when I sat back up, I nearly screamed. A child's face was pressed against the window. Pale skin, dark hair, wide, staring eyes. But something was wrong. The glass reflected weird, but there was no shine in the kid's pupils. just black, completely black. I choked on my breath. Every instinct in me screamed wrong, wrong, wrong. Why was there a child out here? I was so far away from any of the main roads. It wasn't the kind of place children would be. The kid didn't move, didn't blink. Then, another knock. My head snapped toward the sounds, and my stomach dropped. There was a second one. A little girl this time, standing by my back doors. Same dark hair, same vacant, black stare. I don't scare easy. I've slept in parking lots where guys tried breaking into my van. I've camped in places where the only sounds were coyotes circling. I'm not an adrenaline junkie, but I'm also not just starting out. But this was something else. I kept my hand low, fumbling for my knife while trying to keep my breathing steady. That sounds bad. These were just kids, right? But you don't understand. There was something wrong with them. The boy at the window finally spoke. Let us in. 3 words. No emotion. No inflection. Just a flat, empty demand. I shook my head. It made all my hair stand on end. He spoke again, more persistent this time. Let us in. The girl knocked again, harder. I heard it rattle the doors. It was a childish response, but I grabbed my blanket and pulled it up over my shoulders, cowering beneath the heavy cotton like it was a shield. I clutched my knife so tightly, it made my knuckles ache. I don't know how long I sat there, too afraid to breathe. I knew that if I opened the door, I wouldn't be able to close it again. Suddenly, they stepped back. The dark of night engulfed the windows again. I barely had time to process that relief before a new sound nearly made me scream. A tap on the driver's side. I whipped around. There was a third child, a new one. This kid was a little taller. He was maybe 12 at the oldest, standing inches from my driver's side door. Unlike the other two, he was grinning. The handle jerked, but I kept my doors closed so it didn't open. The grin widened. Let us in. The same 3 words again. It wasn't a question, it was a demand. I don't remember grabbing my keys, but suddenly, they were in my hand. I flipped the ignition. The dashboard lit up. My heart slammed. If I had to, I'd run them over. But the engine didn't start. I turned the key again. Nothing. Nothing. The battery was fine. The gas was full. It had started just fine this afternoon. But right now, the van wasn't starting. And the kids, they were still standing there, staring, smiling. I reached for my phone, fingers shaking. No service. Then the tapping started again. Every window, every door. A slow, measured rhythm. Knock, knock, knock. I must have blacked out at some point, because the next thing I knew, the van was filled with light. Sunlight. I woke up still clutching my knife. My doors were locked. My keys were still in the ignition. My phone was in my lap, battery at 23%. I risked a glance outside, but there was no sign of the kids. I opened the driver's side door, heart hammering. The air smelled like damp earth, pine. A beautiful, misty morning. My tires were untouched. There were no footprints in the loamy soil. It was like they'd never been there at all. But they were. I know they were. And I know they're still out there too, because my van still won't start. And I'm worried that tonight, the knock will come again. I'm about to turn 30 in April, and I still have no explanation for the events that took place in my old Chicago apartment when I was around 10 years old. My sister was 7 at the time and had a very vivid imagination, just like myself. I didn't always get along with my sister, and we got into little tiffs with each other a lot. One day, she told me she had made a new friend who lived across the street, and her name was Samantha. I didn't believe her because 1. We were always together, usually and 2. My parents only ever let us play in our fenced yard. There was no way she had time to meet this neighbor, unless of course it was a school friend, which she was not. This went on for a while. My sister would talk about how her and Samantha played all day and talked about funny things. I would give my sister crap and tell her she was a liar and she didn't have any friends. I was kind of a bully of an older sister, but I just didn't believe in the whole imaginary friend thing. I tried to tell my mom about it, but she just assumed my sister was playing around with me and making jokes. One day, when we were playing together in our shared bedroom, I asked her if Samantha could come over and play with us too. She said Samantha couldn't play today for whatever reason, and I laughed at her. I said, "That's because Samantha isn't real." She gave me side eye and said, "Yes, she is." I laughed again and said, "No, she's not." My sister said if I kept talking bad about her friends, something would happen. I just kept laughing. Then, my sister got this nasty look on her face, filled with rage, and said, "Samantha says she's going to get you." I immediately ran to my mom's room and cried to her that my sister was scaring me. She scolded my sister and told us to behave, but it really struck fear in me the way she had said it. Things got really weird after that. I had a Toy Story Jessie doll that would sit on my windowsill with my other dolls. It was late at night. I couldn't sleep for some reason. I just kept staring at the doll. After what felt like a long while, the doll slowly started to rotate its head to look at me. I rubbed my eyes quickly and blinked hard. The doll's head was right back, looking forward like it was before. It sent shivers up my spine. I can still picture it to this day, exactly how it happened. The next day, I was alone in our room watching a movie on the TV. I used to put my legs under the bed while laying on my stomach so I could smack my feet on the outer edge of the frame. Just silly kid stuff. When all of a sudden, what felt like a fingertip dragged from the top of my heel down to my toes. I didn't look back, just bolted up and ran to my mom. She came looking under the bed in my room and told me to quit playing around. I started crying and I pleaded with my mom that it was Samantha. My mom brushed it off and just told me again to behave myself. The following week passed and no new things happened. My sister and I were playing Barbies and she started laughing out of nowhere. I asked her what was so funny and she said, "Samantha got you, huh?" To this day, my sister swears up and down she doesn't remember any of it and she has no idea who Samantha is. But I'll always remember. When I was around 4 years old, my older brother 3 years older. I lived in a small house in a shady neighborhood, but I didn't know that my parents were keen and loved me and my brother, so they were sure to make it so my brother and I never knew that and always felt safe. It was me, my brother, mom, and dad. My dad was working late like usual, his hours making him go in at 4, then come home around 2. So mostly, our mom took care of us. It was a sunny day in spring. My mom had just put training wheels on my new bike so I could keep up with my older brother on his. I was having fun, riding on the sidewalk with my brother without a care. At a shady area, I see a car sitting on one of the streets facing me and my brother riding our bikes. It was a big truck. It was red with tinted windows, stopping you from seeing the driver, the paint scratched and dull. At one point, my brother and I sped up ahead of my mom. That's when I started to notice that the red truck had moved and was slowly moving down the street. After going a bit further, my brother and I realized that the car was always behind or next to us. Luckily, my mom saw the truck and yelled at my brother and I to come back to her as she runs up to defend us. She shoots a dirty glare at the truck, and my mom has always been a scary woman, which she needs to be. She's strong and had a tough body build. As soon as my mom pulls me and my brother close, the truck immediately drives off at the sight of my mom. My mom pulls out her phone, taking a picture of the license plate because it seemed too off-putting to be someone who was just lost in the area. 2 weeks later, sitting in our small living room at night, watching a movie with my mom and my brother before going to bed. In the distance, sirens had been going off for almost 15 minutes when suddenly, There's the sound of someone trying our back door. My mom gets up, holding it shut. Sometimes the lock was faulty, so she made sure to keep it shut. When the door didn't work, the noises go to the kitchen window, hitting it and trying to open it. Even grabbing a rock from the garden, trying to break the window with it. My brother and I hide in our room in our parents' room, the only door inside with a lock, under the bed in the dark. In a matter of a few minutes, the previous sirens were loud now. Police cars going down our street, there was shouting in our backyard. And soon the sirens left, and we were all left shaken by the experience. Turns out that what had happened was that the man who was following us before was running from the police, and took a stop through our backyard and 2 houses before ours to try and break in and hide. The man was a *pedophile and trafficker who would have made me or my older brother his next victims if my mom never came to the rescue. Looking back, I'm extremely grateful that my mother was there and is the mom she is if she wasn't. I wouldn't be writing this more than a decade later. I'm 26, a paramedic in Chicago. I've seen my fair share of messed up things, but this call was different. This one still keeps me up at night. It was a little after midnight when we got the call. Woman stabbed, heavy bleeding. The dispatcher said she had called 911 herself before the line went dead. I was the first to arrive. The cops were still 10 minutes out. The apartment building was old, run down, the kind of place where no one asks questions. I got out of the ambulance, grabbed my medical bag, and hurried inside. The front door of the building was propped open, like someone had left in a hurry. I found apartment 3B. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Nothing. I tried the handle. Unlocked. The second I stepped inside, the smell hit me. That metallic, thick scent of blood. I flicked on my flashlight. The place was a mess. The coffee table was knocked over. A lamp was smashed on the floor. And there was a long streak of blood leading toward the hallway. "Ma'am," I called out. No response. The air was heavy, suffocating. The kind of silence that tells you something is very, very wrong. I followed the blood. It led straight to the bedroom. The door was halfway open. Inside, the bed was unmade, sheets hanging off the side like someone had been dragged. But the worst part, a bloody handprint on the closet door. I swallowed hard. My gut told me to turn around and wait for the cops, but my job is to help people. I had to be sure. I took a breath, reached for the closet handle, and pulled it open. Nothing. Just darkness. The closet was empty. I let out a shaky breath, my heart still racing. Maybe she had managed to run out before I got there. Then, footsteps, behind me. I turned so fast I nearly tripped. A man stood in the doorway. Tall, dark hoodie, a knife in his hand. For a second, we just stared at each other. My body froze. My brain screamed, "Run, run, run." Then, he lunged. I threw my medical bag at him and bolted for the door. He was right behind me, his footsteps pounding the floor. I hit the hallway, running full speed, but I could hear him closing in. I burst out of the apartment, nearly tripping down the stairs. My only thought was get to the ambulance. I could hear him behind me, breathing heavy, his shoes slamming against the pavement. I reached the ambulance, yanked open the door, and slammed it shut just as he hit the side of the vehicle. I locked it. He was standing right there, inches from the window, staring at me. His chest was rising and falling fast. Then, he smiled. It wasn't normal. It was wide, stretched too far, like he was enjoying this. A siren wailed in the distance. Police. The second he heard it, his face went blank. He took one step back, then another. And then, he just walked away. The cops found me shaking in the ambulance. I told them everything. They searched the apartment. That's when they found her. The woman who had placed the 911 call. She had been dead for hours. Her body was stuffed under the bed, stabbed dozens of times. I felt sick. That meant one thing. Someone else had called from her phone. Someone who wanted me there, alone. The cops searched the whole building, but the man was gone. There was no forced entry, no fingerprints, nothing. I couldn't stop shaking. If he had been inside that apartment the whole time, watching me, waiting. I went home that night, but I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, that twisted smile. The next day, I got a call from one of the detectives. They had checked the apartment building's security cameras. That's when they saw something that made my blood turn to ice. At 11:43 p.m., the victim came home alone. At 12:12 a.m., a man in a dark hoodie followed her inside. At 12:37 a.m., the lights in her apartment went off. At 12:50 a.m., the 911 call was made. But here's the thing. In the footage, the woman had already been dead for nearly 20 minutes by then. So tell me, who made that call? And more importantly, why did they want me there? The police continued investigating, but there were no leads. No fingerprints. No forced entry. Just a dead woman and a killer who disappeared. The case went cold after a few weeks. No new evidence, no arrests. But it didn't end there. About a month later, I was finishing a shift when I noticed a folded piece of paper tucked under my car's windshield wiper. I frowned, looking around. The parking lot was mostly empty. I unfolded the paper, my hands shaking. One sentence. You were supposed to die that night. I dropped the note and looked around, my heart hammering in my chest. The lot was empty. Just the hum of distant traffic and the flickering glow of a streetlight. I never worked another night shift again, and I never go anywhere alone after dark. My name is Rachel Hensley. I'm 29 years old and have been working as a paramedic in Chicago for the past 7 years. I've seen things most people couldn't stomach: car wrecks, overdoses, suicides. But nothing has ever shaken me like what happened last night. It was just past midnight when we got the call. Female found hanging in her apartment. Police on the scene. Possible DOA. My partner, Kevin, and I exchanged glances. We knew this was just protocol. The cops needed us to confirm what they already knew. She was dead. We pulled up to the apartment complex, an old brick building in a quiet part of town. The police had already cordoned off the unit. A single officer, Officer Martinez, met us at the door. She's been dead for hours, he said, leading us inside. Neighbor called it in after noticing the smell. I stepped into the apartment and was hit with that all too familiar stench of death. The woman, mid-30s, hummed from the ceiling fan in the dimly lit living room. Her body was stiff, her skin pale and waxy. Rigor mortis had fully set in. No doubt, she'd been gone a while. I was filling out paperwork when I heard it. A phone ringing. It was coming from the dead woman's coffee table. Officer Martinez hesitated before picking it up. "Hello," he answered, putting the call on speaker. A recording played. A woman's voice, trembling and desperate. "Help me. Someone is in my apartment." My stomach dropped. Kevin and I exchanged looks. I grabbed my phone and checked the timestamp on the dispatch log. 12:15 a.m., the exact time we received the call. But that was impossible. This woman had been dead for hours. Officer Martinez went pale. "What the hell is this?" he muttered. He checked the call log. The call had come from this very phone. "Maybe it's an old voicemail," Kevin offered weakly, but we all knew that didn't make sense. "All right, let's wrap this up," Martinez said, clearing his throat. "Medical examiner will take it from here. We left in silence. The ride back to the station felt heavier than usual. I couldn't shake the unease curling in my gut. It was irrational. I knew that. But something about that voice on the recording felt wrong. That night, after my shift, I sat in my apartment, replaying the event in my mind. My hands trembled as I checked my phone out of habit. A new voicemail. I frowned. I never heard it ring. I pressed play. A whisper crackled through the speaker. It was the same voice from earlier, only this time, it said something different. Now he's in your apartment. My breath hitched. The air around me felt heavy, suffocating. I darted my eyes around the room, heart pounding against my ribs. No, this had to be a joke. Maybe Kevin messing with me. I stood slowly, scanning my small one-bedroom apartment. The living room was empty, the kitchen silent. I crept toward my bedroom, hand hovering over the light switch. Then I heard it. A floorboard creaked. Inside my bedroom. I froze, every muscle in my body locked in place. My ears strained against the silence. Another creak. Closer to the door. I turned and bolted for the front door, heart hammering in my chest. My shaking hands fumbled with the lock before I finally yanked it open and stumbled into the hallway. My neighbor's door creaked open across from me. An elderly woman peeked out. "Are you okay, dear?" I could barely get the words out. "Call the police. Someone's in my apartment." Minutes felt like hours until the cops arrived. They searched every inch of my place. Nothing was disturbed. No signs of forced entry. No one there. "Are you sure you heard something?" One of the officers asked, his expression doubtful. I opened my phone to show him the voicemail, but it was gone. Not just the new one. The entire call history. Every record of that night's events erased. The officers left soon after, clearly thinking I was just exhausted. Maybe I was, but as I lay in bed, every shadow felt like it was watching me. Every creak of my apartment sent a jolt of fear through my veins. I barely slept. The next morning, I called Kevin to tell him everything. I barely got 2 words in before he interrupted me. "Rachel, listen to me. I got the same voicemail last night. Neither of us have worked a shift since, and I don't think I ever will again." I'm 29 years old, and I've been a paramedic in Ohio for almost 10 years. I've seen some terrible things. People mangled in car accidents, overdoses, suicides. But nothing ever got to me like this. It started with a dispatch call late at night. A man was having a seizure inside an abandoned house on the outskirts of town. I thought it was odd. Who would even be in that place? But we don't ask questions. We just go. When I arrived, the house was completely dark. My partner was running late from another call, so I had to go in alone. I stepped inside, flashlight cutting through the dust-filled air. Then I saw him. A man was lying on the floor, twitching, eyes rolled back. I rushed over and knelt beside him. His skin was pale, lips dry. "Sir, can you hear me?" I asked, checking his pulse. Then, suddenly, his hand shot up and grabbed my wrist, tight. I froze. His eyes snapped open, staring straight into mine. And then, in a raspy whisper, he said, "They're coming for you next." A chill ran down my spine. "What? Who's coming?" I asked, but his body jerked violently, his muscles seizing up. Foam bubbled from his mouth. Within seconds, he stopped moving. He was gone. My radio crackled. Jason's status. It was dispatch. I stood up, still shaken. Patients deceased. Requesting police on scene. While I waited, I glanced around. The house was falling apart, peeling wallpaper, broken furniture. But then I noticed something strange. A table covered in old newspaper clippings. I stepped closer, brushing off the dust. My stomach twisted. The articles were about a paramedic. an EMT named Jason Miller. Me? I snatched one of the papers and read it. The date was from 3 months in the future. Local paramedic Jason Miller found dead in his ambulance. My breath caught in my throat. This had to be some kind of joke. A sick prank. The police arrived, and I left as quickly as I could. I didn't say a word about the clippings. I just wanted to forget about it. But later that night, while I was back at the station, my radio buzzed. Another call. My heart stopped when I saw the caller ID. It was coming from my own ambulance. I hadn't touched the radio. I picked it up slowly, my hands trembling. "This is Jason," I said. Static. Then a voice whispered through the speaker. "It's time." The lights in the station flickered. Then everything went black.